Hello and welcome to the oddschecker betting show. This is your Guineas preview. It's Guineas weekend at Newmarket, of course, and I'm your host, George Elek, for this. And I'm joined by Andy Holding as we go through Saturday's card and look ahead to Sunday with, of course, the 2,000 Guineas and the 1,000 Guineas, the feature races of the weekend. Andy, very much the flat is back. I always find it weird how it feels like, it was 2 weeks ago that you and I were sitting down chatting about the Grand National in Aintree and the rest of it, and now suddenly we're looking at rattling ground at Newmarket ahead of the first major flat festival of the year.
Yeah, it certainly keeps you on your toes, this game, doesn't it, George?
Yeah.
To say one week you're dealing with 3 mile, 4 mile handicap chasers over in Punchestown and 2 mile novices, and then not too long before you've got to delve into sort of like the thoroughbreds. And it's tricky, I always find, at this time of year, isn't it? Even though we're in a month and a half now into the flat season, technically, since the Lincoln, there's still a hell of a lot of horses that haven't had a run. So when you're looking down these races at Newmarket, like I am, there's an element of risk attached to it. It's okay with horses that have got form and you know they're going to run well, but you just don't know the strength and the level of fitness of the others. So there's always a caveat or an asterisk next to them. So I still think you should be treading relatively carefully. Unless you're a complete sort of kamikaze punter. We don't advocate that, of course.
No.
So, yeah, I've got a few selections, but some more confident than others, I'd say, for reasons I've outlined.
Yeah, we're going to start off with the 140 at Newmarket. We're recording this at about 12 on the Thursday, so final decks are in, but we don't have prices as of yet. I think they'll come out in the next couple of hours or so. But this is the 1 mile 4 handicap. 11 runners have been declared. We've got the likes of Tomatoes Fox, who'll be up there at the top end of the market, Capital Theory, Vayner in this one, and these progressive horses. Who catches your eye at this stage?
Yeah, this should probably be one of my main fancies of the second day of the Newmarket meeting. There's a lovely horse in this, William Drives, is called Crystal Delight. He first sort of came into my proximity when he won at Lingfield back in December, and then he got beat by Zelot at Newcastle. But to be fair, Zelot, if you remember at the time, was a real money spinner for the horse watchers. And he was obviously clearly very well handicapped at the time. But there's certainly no shame in that, because Zelot went on to win, I think, at least 1 or 2 races after that. He was then made favourite at Lingfield again back in February. And I thought he was a bit unlucky not to win that day. He got beat 2.5 lengths. So you kind of think, well, he got beat fair and square in some respects. But he chased a ridiculously strong pace that day. I think Aiming High went off in front. And it was a race where you needed to be just off the speed. And unfortunately, paid for that in the latter stages in chasing a very strong gallop. But I marked him up seriously on that run. I thought this is definitely a horse to keep on the right side of. Still think he's well handicapped off 87. He now goes back on the turf. He's fairly unexposed on the turf. He's just had the 2 runs. He certainly handled the turf on his 2 runs last season before wind surgery. But yeah, he's a handicapper I think we're going to be hearing fairly decent good things of throughout the course of the year. I see him as a Royal Ascot horse. I think he'll end up in the 1.25 mile handicap or the 1.5 mile handicap at the Royal meeting. And if he's going to meet my expectations, he's going to have to get off a mark of 87 and get up towards 95 or upwards, because most of the bottom weighted handicappers in those kind of races at Ascot are at least 95 plus. So he's got to win at least a race or 2 before that, but I think he's capable of that. And hopefully he'll start off that procedure with a victory at Newmarket on Saturday.
Well, the forecast prices, and I don't think we can read too much into those, has Crystal Delight down as a 9-2 chance. But we'll see what happens in terms of when the prices are open. Yes, exactly. Lovely. With 11 places. And who knows? Keep an eye on the oddschecker grids, and you might even get 4 places if someone's feeling generous. We'll see how that goes. That is the opener. We're glad to say we've got prices now going forward. And we've got the Fillies and Mares listed event next up in the 215, where Gale Force Mayor is the 130 favourite ahead of Azure Blue at 9-2. Heredia, 6-1, Royal Ascot hero of last season. Padika, 13-2. Fast Response, 15-2. Makarova, 11-1. Bigger prices bar those. Andy, how do you see this?
Well, it's very, very rare that you can say such a thing as Michael Dodds has got a stranglehold of a race at Newmarket. But he has here with Gale Force Mayo and Azure Blue, both course and distance winners. I think Gale Force Mayo has got an incredible record at the Rally Mile. I can't remember how many times she has won. I should have checked or done my research before, but it's at least 3, I think. But she did get beat on her final start, and I think that was the first time she did get beat here by stabber companion Azure Blue. It was a filly that I luckily latched onto towards the back end of the season. She improved through the ranks. She was a bit unlucky one day at York, and I thought, oh, I'll upgrade that run because I thought she should have won that day. She then went to the Rally Mile and won a handicap, and then she rounded off the season in listed company, beating her stable companion, which I think is always a guide to where you stand with regards to listed fillies form. But a lot depends on fitness, really. I don't know which one of these two is the fitter than the other. You'd imagine that Michael Dodds will have them somewhere close to where he wants them to be, with a little bit to work with. But out of the two, I'd always be going with the younger horse, and one that I've sort of like got a bit of an affinity with. So I do think Azure Blue deserves a little bit of loyalty here, because I think she'll be better than Gale Force Mayo as the season progresses. Also pay attention to Boudica as well, who's very much a have suitcase will travel horse. She's been around, sort of like the continent for a little while in France and racing here, there and everywhere. I think she went to the Maidan, and she comes in good form, and with fitness on her side and proven track form, I think Boudica will go well. But provided she's somewhere near peak fitness, Azure Blue might have not only her measure but the rest of the field as well.
Interesting. Azure Blue 9-2, best price as it stands, with Hills, Coral, 10 Bet, Sporting Index, Live Score Bet, Quinn Bet, Ladbrokes, all 9-2, and Boudica 13-2 with a couple of firms, including William Hill. But Azure Blue seemingly the selection for Andy there. On to the 250, the 6 furlong handicap, where Tenmori is the 7-1 favourite ahead of Admiral D at 17-2. Probe is 11-1, Blackrod 12-1. Chairman of the board 14-1, Spirit of Light, Summerhand, and Apollo 1, and Lethal Levi 16-1, as a Silver Samurai, plenty of others, Leap Abroad, all 16-1, 18-1 bar those. I mean, I always see Summerhand in these big field handicaps at a double figure price and can't believe my eyes. But Andy, you'll tell me where to look for this.
Yeah, I think these are the kind of races where, you've got 20 odd runners, and at some stage in your life, you would have backed all of them. I think that's probably a fair assessment. I think the draw and where the pace is going to come from is going to be crucial here rather than anything else. I wouldn't have an overly strong view on this race because I think it's just one of those very, very complex handicaps that you could run 50 times and get a different result. For instance, if the high draw was to dominate, and there's a good chance that might well be if in a big field, I think Probe will probably race prominently towards the near side rail. He's drawn 22. He's a kind of horse that takes a little bit of a grip. So the one that caught the eye in that race here last time, I think there was 4 or 5 of them that reopposed. The big eye catcher was Admiral D from the Richard Fahey stable. Now he's drawn 23 at 23, which could end up being a great draw, tragic draw, I don't know. But this is the kind of race that I think he could run well in. He just got a little bit detached last time in a smaller field, but in a bigger field where you'd like to think the pace is a little bit more generated, then he'd have a good chance of coming through strongly at the end. So with the cheap pieces on for the first time, and I think those are on just to keep his mind focused, because he definitely had a little bit of a mid-race crisis, as I said, in that course and distance handicap here last time. That might just make the difference between winning and losing with Admiral D. So very early days. A racing, I'm pretty much certain I won't be putting anything on my column, but for this podcast purposes, it'd be a shame if I didn't have a selection of sorts. So Admiral D is the one.
Admiral D 17-2, a tentative selection for Andy, it's fair to say, in the 250. Maybe something stronger in the next, where we have got it's the other handicap, isn't it, over a mile and a furlong. It's the Suffolk Stakes, of course. The Suffolk, where Jimi Hendrix is the 9-2 favourite ahead of King of Conquest at 11-2, Empire State of Mind 17-2, Majestic 9-1, Turntable 10-1, Saga and Cadillac both 11-1. Dual Identity 12-1, 20-1 bar those.
Yeah, similar to the first race with that Willie Jarvis horse. I'd have a more firm idea of where I'm going in a race like this. A little bit more established, you'd say, these horses. Most of the field has had a run. I think the Lincoln this year was quite a good race. In fact, I think it was a very good race. Certainly the race is beginning to take shape. The race, of course, it was won by Migration. But already the form lines are looking fairly solid. Al Mubhir, the fourth horse, I thought he won well last time out at Leicester. There was a good run from Boardman, who finished 11th. He was an improver the other day at Haydock. Montasib, who finished 19th, he also ran very eye-catchingly at Haydock as well at the same meeting. So yeah, I think we've got to start feeling a little bit upbeat about this Lincoln this year. And the big eye-catcher for me, one of them, was Majestic. Now he went into that race obviously laid out for it because he'd won the Cambridgeshire on his final start for Mick Shannon. Obviously now with son Jack, there's not much of a trainer switch there as such. But given that he's obviously proven in those large field straight mile handicaps, then Lincoln looked the obvious start for him. But unfortunately, the ground went soft or even heavy in places on Town Moor, which might not necessarily have suited him. But I thought he ran really well to finish fourth of the 22. And he was always up the speed as well. It definitely paid to be off the speed. The Migration came from a long way back, didn't he, to win. He was one of the only few horses that was handy throughout, that maintained his position and only just faded in the latter stages to get beat 3 lengths. But on good ground, he's a totally different animal, as we saw in the Cambridgeshire, and indeed in a big field and with a strong pace. His time figure for that Cambridgeshire last season was extraordinarily good, suggesting that he's almost like group class. So I do think off a mark of 93, he's still potentially very well handicapped. He's got a nice draw in the middle. 17 runners go to post at time recording. 10 is ideal, so we can go either way depending on how the tractor riding comes Saturday. So he's got to be on anyone's shortlist. I think he's the only course and distance winner in the field as well, having checked it earlier. No, there's one more turntable, I beg your pardon, but one of only 2, let's say, course and distance winners. So yeah, I think that's a really strong advice. If anyone ever listens to me, then Majestic is the way I suggest you approach this race come Saturday.
I think they do listen. Personally, Andy, I think that's why we have so many. I can be pretty confident that they're not tuning in to listen to me just talk through the oddschecker grids. So Andy, I think we can be fairly certain they are listening. And Majestic is the 9-1 selection there for Andy. Skybet are paying 6 places here, but they're 8-1 if you want the extra place. But Paddy's and Betfair Sportsbook, who are the 9-1, are 5 places. Onto the Palace House Stakes now. And Twilight Calls is the 130 favourite ahead of Manakan at 9-2. Equality 11-1. Russell 12-1. Living the Dream 12-1 as well. Vad Dream 16-1. Silky Wilkie 20-1, as is Equality, Marvellous, Chipstead, and Arecibo with 22-1. Bardos. 5 furlong affair this, Andy. How do you see it?
Yeah, I'm losing me already, but you could definitely lose a little bit more with the amount that could come off in your hands, scratching your head in a race like this. I mean, this is just minefield stuff. Again, doing this advance of the draw and working out the pace map is very, very tricky. I think if you fancy Twilight Calls, it's a case of in Henry can we trust, because you've just got to hope that he's got this horse singing and dancing first time out. He did last year when he won at the April meeting, the Craven meeting. He was very impressive that day, so much so that Henry decided to roll the dice and stick him into this race last year, the Palace House. But if you remember, he was drawn 12 of 12, and as it panned out, you need to be either on the far side rail or towards the middle, let's say, not the near side. And he ended up getting a little bit isolated. He won his race near side, but he was too far off the speed where he needed to be. So I think he was a bit unlucky not to win this race last year. But I think that at the back of Henry's mind, he's thinking, well, I've got a bit of unfinished business in the Palace House, plus the fact that I don't want to waste a run because I know he goes well fresh by running him at any other race than this. So I think this has probably been the target for a little while. again, whether he's in the right place, I don't know. I think Live the Dream, drawn his 16, he's going to take them along at a good gallop. We know he's a real trailblazer, and he's 16. So, like I say, you could do with Twilight Calls being carried into the business end of the race on his side, over on the far side. Whether that'll materialise, I don't know, like I say, without doing the pace map. But other than the draw, I think Twilight Calls has got everything in his favour. Course and distance form, with bit of luck in the race last year, and goes really well fresh. But I think bookmakers and punters have already latched onto that, and he does look a little bit skinny at this stage, but he is the selection all the same.
Twilight Calls 130. That is with Coral, Quinbet, Ladbrokes. 3 more races on the card, and we are now at the 2,000 guineas, the 440, where Auguste Rodin is the 6-4 favourite, ahead of Little Big Bear at 11-2, Chaldine 13-2, Sakir 8-1, Royal Scotsman 8-1, Silver Knot 12-1, Noble Style 18-1, Indestructible 20-1, 33-1 bar those, Holloway Boy to bar mile amongst those. Always fascinated. I mean, this is, Andy, I love your 2-year-old analysis, where your speed figures are always very interesting when it comes to marrying the eye test to what horses have actually done. And a lot of these horses featured prominently on your lists last season and kind of rose to the top of the rankings over the course of the campaign. Auguste Rodin at 6-4 favourite, is that a prohibitive price? Right area there.
I'm going to stick my neck out here, George, and say Augustine Rodin is pretty poor value at that price. Again, I'm not saying for 1 minute he can't win. That would be irresponsible of me to say that. But I find it hard to get my head around why he's so short. I actually don't think he's got the best form in the race. And I don't want to sound, like I say, disrespectful. I'm pretty sure that Ryan Moore will end up riding him because he has been the talk of the town for a little while. But I do think Little Big Bear has got just as much, if not more, natural ability than Augustine Rodin. Look, what I'm trying to get at is I think Little Big Bear's a faster horse than Augustine Rodin. The sort of time figures that Little Big Bear, for instance, who Stable Companion did last year, compared to Augustine Rodin is interesting. He clocked a very big number when he won the Phoenix Stakes, which I think was his last race of the season. Over 6 furlongs. But if you look at his work in the latter stage of his race as well, you can't believe that he managed to win over 5. I mean, he was always very strong in the last furlong or so. He hit the line really hard that day when he won the Phoenix. His time figure is extraordinary. His sectionals are always good. He won over 6.5 at the Cut, which is a stiff 6.5. So it's equivalent to 7. And you could just imagine like Little Big Bear going through the line that day when I watched these videos back and think an extra furlong, he's not going to not stop running. But I think that's a really tricky decision to be made there by Ryan Moore. He might go the way of the market, might go with 6-4 shot over the 11-2 shot. But to me, Little Big Bear's I'll say better horse, but like I say, he's a faster horse. So it's whether he can channel all that natural exuberance and speed and pace that he's got into the stiff mile on the Roundly Mile, because you do need to stay the Guineas Mile well. But this is a wide open race. I mean, you've got Chaldine, who won the Dewhurst. The form of that race has already worked out well, courtesy of Isaac Selby, having got well beaten in that race, winning the Greenham the other day. It was the race that, of course, Chaldine fluffed his lines and didn't he? He Frankie Dettori. But I did notice that he actually completed the course loose and he ran alongside Isaac Selby. So he actually effectively had Frankie on board, so he's got
8
stone less on his back, but at least he had a run down the track and a good workout as such. So it depends on how which way you read that. But I do think the form of the Dewhurst is arguably one of the best pieces of form lines coming into this race. As I said, better than the Futurity win in my estimation than the one that Augustine Rodin won. You chuck into the mix Sakir, who's looked incredibly good on his last 2 starts as a 2-year-old, and he's had a track spin the other day. I think he had a nice little trial, didn't he, with 2 or 3 other runners, and he was apparently very good. Indestructible won a very good edition of the Craven in a good time, so he's proving himself. He's trained on, and you've got Royal Scotsman as well, who was closing in on Sheldon and the Dewhurst, and the dogs are barking about him. I think this is a real headache. So much so that I haven't put anything up, and I'm probably even going to wait until Saturday before my column comes, perhaps just to get an idea of the Friday meeting, what the ground's like, where you need to be drawn, if there's a little bit of a bias. That little extra little bit of information I might need might just tilt me in the one way or the other. But my short list at the moment is Little Big Bear, Chaldine and Royal Scotsman. That sounds a little bit inconclusive at the moment, but I just can't put my colours to the mast at the moment, not knowing all the information I need. But I'd definitely be against Augustine Rodin at the price. That is guaranteed. That's 100% sure.
Little Big Bear 11-2 with William Hill, who are 4 places. Chaldine 13-2 in live score bet, and 10 bet Royal Scotsman 8-1 pretty much across the board. Do you want to ask about a horse that I mentioned earlier that I followed your 2-year-old stuff closely last year? Noble Star was one that you had been doing very good numbers, and I remember I think Noble Star's last run raced Keen and 1/6, coming into this unbeaten. I mean, obviously there are going to be stamina concerns given hasn't raced further than 6 furlongs thus far. But in terms of your kind of, how does Noble Star stack up in your numbers?
Very good. Yeah, he's got some times in keeping with quite a few of these. A lot of them did high 90s, 95s, 96, 97s. I think Little Big Bear did the fastest. I think we got him doing a 97 over in the Curragh, which puts him top. But like I said, there's a hell of a lot of these that have done similar numbers at Group 1 level. The only problem with a horse like Noble Star, I personally don't normally go for horses that have just got 5-6 furlong form. I don't like it when they try and stretch out. I mean, it's very difficult for them to get an extra 2 furlongs first time out in the Guineas where it's going to be strongly run. I prefer something with at least 7 furlong form, like a Chaldine. Like I say, I've made allowances for Little Big Bear because he was 6.5 and he was strong at the fixture. I'd almost put that down as a 7 furlong run for Little Big Bear. We know that Royal Scotsman stays. We know that Chaldine stays. We know that Indestructible stay. Augustine Rodin, absolutely no problem. He's a mile, but I always think Augustine Rustan, he's definitely not as quick as some of these. They are quicker horses, so he's going to need an absolute out-to-out, end-to-end, out-and-out mile race for him to win. As I said, at 6-4, he's going to need a hell of a lot to go right, and he just wouldn't be for me. But yeah, Noble Star he's certainly worthy of his place in the line for sure.
Great stuff. That's Andy's 2,000 Guineas preview, and you have to wait, I think, until the morning of the race to find out who he ends up selecting.
Sorry, apologise. I'd love to put I'm going to put up now, but I mean, it might be a race I might not even put up anything in at all. I don't have to. I'm not forced to because it's 2,000 Guineas, but the chances are with 4 or 5 places on offer and the prices they're likely to be going on Saturday, then I'd find it hard to resist probably.
So Little Big Bear, Chaldine and Royal Scotsman making up the shortlist as it stands. 2 more races on the card, no prices for either. We've got the 6 furlong handicap and then the 7 furlong handicap. No prices, Andy, but anything that the guys should account for?
Yeah, definitely. Clive Cox runs a nice horse called Eminency in a 5:15. He was well fancied at Kempton on his seasonal reappearance the other day. He was slowly away, got into an awful track position, then finished his race off incredibly strongly. Did 33 and change, which is very hard to do at Kempton, given the track's riding quite slow at the moment. I suggest he's better than 86 rated handicapper. And I would say the best bet over the 3-day Guineas meeting is a horse called Yakulev of Paul Coles in the final race. He comes out of a very strongly run handicap, the best handicap run at the Craven meeting, won by Once More for Luck. And I just think he was unlucky to bump into a horse. I think we're going to be hearing decent things of throughout the season. I think he'll be group class, the winner, Ishmael Mohammed's horse. The 2 of them pull well clear of the rest. It was an incredibly fast time. And he dropped from a class 3-2 handicap, in which his time figure was off the scale, into a class 4 race. If this horse ran in a listed race, I'd be looking at him at a big price. And I think he'll be 2nd or 3rd favourite. I presume Striking Star will be favourite, being as it's Charlie Appleby, Will Buick with a 2 by its name. Then you've got Divine Lieber in there as well, and Chartwell House and one or two others. So I'm hoping he'll be at least 4-1 upwards. But yeah, he'd be a strong bet with Ryan Moore booked. Your Calef in the 550 on Saturday.
There we go. Yaukalef. No prices as of yet, but keep your eyes peeled. Right, that's Saturday done. Time to turn our attention to Sunday's racing. Of course, it is 1,000 guineas on the Sunday at Newmarket. And as we are recording this on Thursday afternoon, these are still anti-post markets. We don't have final decks. They'll come out at about 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock on Friday. Might change. Some of these might not run. It comes with that caveat. But we're going to go through the three races where we do have prices at the moment. We've got the 150, which is the Guineas Festival Handicap, the Dahlia Stakes, and then the 1,000 guineas. So they're the three races we can cover off on the Sunday. Kicking off with that Guineas Festival Handicap, where Isra is the 92 favourite, with Elek, Duke of Verona, Semhan, all 10-1, First Man 11-1, HMS President 12-1, as is Juvent and Bandinelli, both 12-1 as well, 14-1 Bardos. I mean, this is going to cut up a lot, you'd think, Andy, but anything that tickles your fancy at this stage?
Yeah, I think there's a couple in there. I'd probably take a chance on one that hasn't had a run, which is a little bit against my normal strategy. But I'm allowed to make the odd allowance here, then, everywhere. And Semhan is a very interesting runner from the George Baker stable. I did notice that he came to hand rather quickly last season. He won first time off the reel at Salisbury, winning very, very easily. And then he came here to this meeting. I think it was this race actually last year, if my memory serves me correct. And he was punted in from, I think, around about 7 or 8-1 in the morning into favouritism. A little bit of an audacious gamble, it seemed. But as it panned out, the punt was well and truly landed. Did it in really good fashion. Went through the race like a particularly well handicapped horse and beat a decent field. His subsequent next two efforts were a little bit disappointing at Ascot and Goodwood respectively, but then he bounced back at the July meeting. So there's a bit of a pattern developing here with this fella. He's obviously very, very keen on the gradients of either the July course or the Rowley Mile. Heavy ground wouldn't have suited him on his final start of the season in the November handicap, but on good to firm ground, which it looks like being over the weekend, unless they get rain, which is forecast here, there and everywhere, but I think it's very isolated and they're only going to get showers rather than any huge quantities. So that should be absolutely ideal. But it looks as though Connections have laid him out for this race, as far as I could see. So at the prevailing price at the moment, the current prices, I'd probably be leaning in the direction of Semhan or Kemhan.
Semhan there, 10-1 across the board. The bookies with prices out at the moment. We've got Sky Bet, Paddy's, Unibet and Ball Sports all 10-1. The Dahlia Stakes next up, which is I think the 3 o'clock on the card, isn't it? Yeah, over a mile and 1 furlong. And here we've got prices across the board with the Moonlight, the 7-2 favourite, ahead of Life in Motion and Prosperous Voyage, both 4-1. Al Hassan is 7-1, Via Sistina 8-1, 12-1 above the curve, and Shara 14-1 bar. Andy.
Yeah, with the Moonlight, head of the market. I watched her run quite a few times out in Dubai at Maidan, and she was very impressive both times, winning a couple of really fast speed figures. And then she went to Keeneland and ran with great distinction there 22 days ago. If you fancy her, I couldn't put you off because she's obviously fitting well. And as far as globetrotting is concerned, she's pretty used to going anywhere really that the box will allow her to take her as far as it'll take her. She's a course winner as well, which is great. She got form at the Rowley Mile. If I could get my words out. But I do like Via Sistina in this, George. A horse that I've always really liked. She's got a very, very high cruising speed. And she put that high cruising speed to really good use when she won on her final start last season. But prior to that, she was arguably very unlucky not to beat Creative Flair, who's a very useful horse. That was a race that I think if James Spencer perhaps could have ridden again, he might have at times his run a little better. But on the day, she had to play second fiddle to a decent horse. But that was a huge step up in the right direction because prior to that, she hadn't really indicated that perhaps she was going to be a listed filly or a group filly. But now that that is very much confirmed, I think George Bowie can campaign her accordingly this season. This seems a good starting point for her over a track that she absolutely loves. She's probably only got a few races that she can race in on home soil, on the Rowley Mile, which suits her really well. So it's no point going there half cocked. I think he'll have to have her, as near a fit as he can. So 8-1, I think it's a fair shout. And by and large, Jamie does really get on with this mare. So Via Sistina 8-1. She's a decent each way bet. Like I say, given that she's got such a high cruising speed and she has a tendency to get down into the business end of the race quite cheaply.
Remember, she was a massive gamble on first run for George Bowie back in October last year. I think 25-1 into 11-2 was just touched off by Creative Flair.
I do remember it well, George. Yeah, because I put her up in my column.
No, that's where it came from.
The scar has just been gnawed away.
Here's a starter for 10 for you though. Where's Via Sistina? Where in Europe is the road named Via Sistina?
It's got to be somewhere in Italy by the sound of it.
Go on.
Close to the Vatican?
Yeah, not far. Rome. Spot on. Well done.
Okay.
Yeah.
I've probably walked down it because I've been to Rome quite a few times, but me, my ignorant self, I was probably watching a race on my phone as I was doing it.
As it probably was walking around the Circus Maximus. Great city, right? Via Sistina runs through it and is Andy's selection in the Dahlia on Sunday afternoon in rather than Rome. On to the big one of the day, though, where we've got the 1,000 guineas, and the 5-2 favourite is Tahiyra with Sky Bet and Bet UK. Meditate is the 9-2 second favourite. Mama's Girl 6-1. Remarquee 7-1. Remarquee 7-1. Dream of Love is 8-1. And then double figures from there. Morge 16-1, as is Lazoo 25-1. Bardot's Andy. I guess all eyes may be on the weather forecast and the going for the 1,000 guineas. Yeah,
two things, really, George, to be honest. First and foremost, definitely the going with that forecast. Friday into Saturday more predominantly. I think Sunday's going to be dry. I think the Coronation Day and the King could get wet. Hopefully he's got somebody walking alongside him with an umbrella. Or he's not open top anyway, let's say, in one of the carriages he goes in, because I think he's going to get pretty much a bit of a soaking. But Newmarket's a funny place, isn't it? It can miss the rain, it can miss the showers. It almost seems to have a microclimate of its own. So given that it's good to firm at the moment, I'd say they'd have to have some downpours in quite huge quantities to change it from what it is. It might go good ground, but it certainly won't ride I don't think, as soft as it did at the Craven meeting. That should change the dynamics, I think, of a few, like Remarquee, for instance, who won the Fred Darling. I mean, she idolised that ground that day, that soft ground over in Newbury. So that might have a detrimental effect on her chances, arguably. Mama's Girl as well. She's already proven with a little bit of ease in the ground as well, having won one of the preeminent trials. We haven't seen Tahiyra or Meditate. You're always taking a little bit of a risk with backing horses, of course, haven't had a run. And I'm still waiting for Dermot Wells horses to catch fire. I've done quite a few podcasts myself for my own sort of column, and I keep mentioning that Dermot Wells hasn't had a winner for 175 days. And he's had quite a few short price favourites that got beat. So even though Tahiyra brings a really good profile into the race, 5-2 looked plenty skinny enough with, like I say, from a yard out of form. Nothing negative about Aidan O'Brien's horse, obviously Meditate. She's a very likeable character, and I'm sure she'll go have connections that have farmed this race in recent times. We need to know the draw as well. That's the other important fact. So take a look at the 2,000 guineas before making your bets, I would suggest, on Sunday. If there's a pronounced bias one way or the other, high numbers towards the stand time, low numbers towards the middle, then you need to make a note of that. But either way, my selection is Dream of Love from the Charlie Appleby stable. You probably wouldn't be aware of it, George, but I did put this filly up about a month ago, might have been 2 months ago. After she ran an extraordinary race.
Why do you assume I wouldn't be aware of it, Andy?
Your memory needs rejogging, that's all. Your memory needs rejogging. She ran an extraordinary race over in Dubai 100 days ago. I was expecting her to perhaps go for one of the trials, but Charlie Appleby's been more than happy by the looks of it to let her roll the dice and come straight here. I mean, if you cast your mind back and watch that Group 3 over in Maidan, like I've done several times, you still can't believe how she managed to finish so close to Morge, and with another couple of strides, she would have easily passed Sideburn Soror's horse. And given that she gave that horse at least a 10 to 15 length head start, just by the way the race developed, she got shuffled back through the pack with horses dropping back in her lap. It's quite an extraordinary run, and I sort of massively marked her up. And then I went and watched her 2 previous races last season. They both came over the Rowley Mile, so that was a huge amount of encouragement when I was looking at her profile. She managed to win first time out despite running green. And then the second time, she was just a bit keen early on. She actually come out the stalls quite well in that Montrose Filly Stakes, a listed contest. But it meant that she saw too much daylight and she was expending a bit too much energy for my liking. But I did like the way she stayed on and kept with the front 2 all the way up the hill. That was on soft ground, so if it does rain, it wouldn't be a problem. But ideally, I think just nice ground would be fine for her. But she just looked a totally different filly when they took her out to Maidan. And I'm hoping now that they come back to Newmarket off the back of that run with a bit of a suntan, having been on a sunbed for a little while. I think she's going to run a massive race, Dream of Love. I really do like this filly. I'm quite excited about her chances. So, yeah, despite all those other horses in there and the complexities and the tricky nature of it, I'll be shocked if Dream of Love doesn't run well at a track she's already run well before.
Dream of Love is 8-1, best price with Sky Bet, as is often the case. As Andy was talking through his selection there, a bookie cut. Betfred went from 7-1, 6-1, but 8-1 is still flying around there with Sky Bet about Dream of Love. Andy's section for the 1,000 guineas. Anything else on the card on Sunday that catches your eye, Andy?
I think the first race is interesting. A horse that I'm going to follow throughout the season. I think Owen Burrows had a fantastic campaign, 2022. His strike rate was extraordinary, and he did some amazing things with some of his very better horses. But I do like Amnart. He only ran the 3 times. He won all 3 times. Workmanlike, more than impressive on his last start when he beat Junko over in Longchamp. I think that was overnight weekend, but the ground was absolutely bottomless that day. I feared the worst, I must admit. I thought he was a good thing in the build-up to the race, but then they had that downpour, as they often do in the Paris area, and it caused the ground to go very much not in his favour, having won previously on good to firm and good ground, but he still showed the class to withstand that negative. And I thought the fact that he managed to do that showed that he is a world-class horse. So, and Mart, I think, is one of the horses for me personally to follow throughout the rest of the season, because I think he'll take a bit of beating in that 1.25 mile category.
What kind of price do you reckon it'll be for this?
Well, I'd say be odds against, because I think this race was priced up. Or there was a race similar to this priced up the other day, and I think Adiyar was just slightly ahead of him in the betting, but again, that was on soft ground, so bookmakers are always likely to favour Adiyar on softish ground, whereas Amnart is probably better on good ground. But if the ground's good or good to firm, I think Amnart's got a huge advantage. So I would say he'd be in and around the 7-4 mark, something like that, 7-4, 2-1.
Interesting. Well, let's see what we get served up as the prices come out, probably tomorrow afternoon. Thank you very much to Andy for sharing his tips, thoughts and insight ahead of Guineas weekend. Fingers crossed for a cracking weekend of racing at Newmarket. A nice long bank holiday thanks to the King as well. So much appreciated. Thanks to Andy. We'll be back again soon. So make sure you do subscribe to the Oddschecker YouTube channel, where you can find the Oddschecker betting show every week. Normally Andy and I catching up ahead of the weekend's racing. Enjoy the racing. Hopefully some winners in there, and we'll speak again soon. Please do ensure you're gambling responsibly.